Hello there. Welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast. Today we're going to begin our first round coverage of the NBA playoffs. So, of course, we're starting off here with the 3-6 matchup, Philadelphia 76ers versus Brooklyn Nets. We're going to be doing an entire breakdown of the starting lineups, the benches, the coaches. We're going to look at their records, all the fun stuff today. And, of course, the reason why we're starting with the 3-6 matchup is because we don't know what the 1-8 and 2-7 matchups are going to look like. So we're going to start with the 3-6 and 4-5 matchups because they're already set in stone. We know these series are for sure happening. And, if you want to hear about my play-in predictions, you can definitely go check those out. The Western Conference one, obviously the seeds kind of changed around a little at the last couple games of the year. So those matchups are not entirely accurate anymore. However, everything I said in terms of matchup-wise, I think still applies. And I was contemplating just taking that video down and redoing it, but for some weird reason, that is by far and away the most viewed video on this channel. I don't know why. I don't know why particularly that video. Maybe it's because I talked a lot about the Lakers and they're probably the most popular team in the league. I guess that's it. That's all I can really think of. But it has 80 views, and I think the next closest in terms of views on this channel is like 36. So I just decided to leave it up. And obviously we did the Eastern breakdown as well, so you can go look at those play-in predictions if you want to. But today we're talking specifically about the Sixers-Nets matchup. So let's go through the starting lineups. Of course, we all know that Brooklyn is here because of the team they had before the trade deadline. Obviously, Kevin Durant was playing at an MVP level before he got hurt. It seems like that happens every year. Every year he was in Brooklyn, it seemed like he was in the MVP race. Brooklyn was looking really good, and then he gets hurt, and it all goes to you-know-what. And that is the same exact thing that happened this year, only even worse for them because, Durant's gone. So let's go through the starting lineups. Like I said, point guard, we have James Harden versus Spencer Dinwiddie. This is easily James Harden, not even remotely close. I still think James Harden is an all-NBA level player, and I will vehemently defend James Harden to this day. I know I have a bias. He's one of my three favorite players in the NBA. However, I remember one of the big narratives, and I've talked about this a lot. One of the big narratives when he got traded to Philadelphia was he can't go in there and think that it's his team. He can't go in there and just force up all these shots and think that it's his team. He gets no credit for how he changed his game around. Other players do it and fit into a system. They get a lot of credit. When Harden did it, people just say he's washed because he's no longer averaging 30-plus points per game like he did in Houston. But he led the league in assists this year, and he still averaged, I think, 22 or 23 points per game. Was really efficient this year, plays perfectly within the Sixers offense. Him and Joel are one of the best duos in the league. And I'm sick and tired of people not giving Harden the credit he deserves. The fact that he wasn't an all-star is disgusting to me. I know he's not going to make an all-NBA team just because there's this weird narrative that he's no longer a good player. But like I said, he led the league in assists. He still gives you over 20 a game. He's grown as a defender. He's obviously not a lockdown defender, but he's definitely improved on that side of the ball. And he's a big reason why Joel is going to win MVP this year because him and Embiid in the pick and roll is basically unguardable. So I like Spencer Dinwiddie, but of course he's nowhere near the level of talent that James Harden is. Dinwiddie can get hot in different spurts, but overall Harden is the far better player here. Shooting guard matchup I think is actually kind of close. You have Tyrese Maxey versus Mikal Bridges. I am going to go with Mikal Bridges. I really like his game. If you listen to me, you know that I love versatile wing-type players, and that's exactly what Mikal Bridges is. He's a 3-and-D Swiss Army knife, do-it-all kind of guy. And ever since he's gotten to Brooklyn, I can't remember how many. I want to say like 4. He's had 4 40-point games. So we all knew that there was untapped potential there in Phoenix because he was probably 4th when it comes to, scoring option behind Booker, Paul, and Ayton. But now that he's essentially the number one option on Brooklyn, he's really flourished offensively and shown off that he has a lot to offer on that side of the ball. As much as I like Tyrese Maxey, he's a phenomenal scorer and Fits perfectly within Philly's lineup. I know I said that for Harden, but it's true for Maxey as well because, he was, I think, drafted to be a point guard, and he's kind of transitioned to more as just the shooting guard, the scorer type of guy, and he's really done that well. But I think Mikal is just a more well-rounded, more well-polished player, so I'll go with him. And he is their best player, so yeah, he probably was going to win that regardless. Next, we have the small forward matchup, Tobias Harris versus Cam Johnson. I like Cam Johnson. I think he's a really high-end role player, a guy who knocks down threes. Those guys will always find jobs in the NBA. Tobias Harris, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with. There's moments where he looks phenomenal, and it looks like, you can understand why he got that contract. And that's just something that's always going to be tied to Tobias Harris. That contract, it's just, I think it's like $33 million per year. Obviously, on the open market, he's getting nowhere near that. It's always going to be talked about, but he's a really good NBA player. Not an all-star level, but definitely above average starting level NBA player. And Cam Johnson, I would classify more as in that role player, which is, there's nothing wrong with being a role player, especially at the high level Cam Johnson does it. I'm going Tobias in this matchup. Next, at the power forward position, we have PJ Tucker versus Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm going with Finney-Smith in this matchup. I think he's just a overall better version than PJ Tucker. I think he does everything PJ Tucker does, but at a better level. He's a better defender, which is kind of what PJ Tucker is known for, his defense. Finney-Smith does that, I think, even at a higher level. And same with the three-point shot. I mean, Tucker's known for his corner threes. Well, Dorian can shoot all over. And also, you look back to last year, his postseason run with Dallas. He was a crucial part. I would say probably outside of Luka or Brunson, he was the most important piece. He was the third most important piece of that run they had all the way to the Western Conference Finals. I think he's a criminally underrated player around the NBA. I'd take him over Tucker. And then, of course, the center matchup. We have this year's MVP, Joel Embiid, taking on Nick Claxton, who Claxton has had a phenomenal year in terms of his growth. I always thought there was something there in terms of the defensive potential, but I never saw him jumping up, especially as quick as he has. He's going to get first-team all-defense votes, rightfully so. And I like him a lot, but you're going against Joel Embiid, arguably the best player in the world right now. I'm taking Joel, obviously. Now we look at the bench. I do like some parts of Philly's bench, but overall, I honestly do like Brooklyn's bench a little more. I think that might be some of my bias towards shooters because they have two of the best shooters in the league with Seth Curry and Joe Harris when they're healthy. They have a little bit of defense with Royce O'Neal and Day'Ron Sharpe. And then Yuta Watanabe, when he's hot, is one of the most lethal shooters in the league as well. Philly has a more of a balanced bench with Shake Milton, D'Anthony Melton, more of a scrappy guards. Jalen McDaniels is a good, similar that Swiss Army knife kind of thing. And then you have Niang and Reed, who not big on those guys, especially Reed is extremely undersized. I think he's like 6'5" or 6'4" playing the center, which, can be done. I'm just not a big fan of that, but it doesn't matter when you have Joel Embiid. I think you can go either way with these benches, and I might just have a slight bias towards the Nets bench because I love the shooting there, and also maybe it's just a little bit of me looking more so on paper as opposed to in reality, but I like Brooklyn's bench a little more. Next, we have the coaching matchup, Doc Rivers versus Jacque Vaughn. I like Jacque Vaughn a lot. I think he can go on to be a really good elite head coach in the NBA. Whenever Steve Nash was fired from Brooklyn, the Nets went on a crazy run when Jacque Vaughn was elevated to head coach with KD and them, and he still kept them afloat post the KD trade, of course. I like him, but Doc Rivers, I've had my problems with Doc Rivers. Not that long ago, I was actually in the camp of firing Doc Rivers from Philly. I've had a very strange relationship, not relationship, obviously, but, opinions on Doc, because when I first started watching basketball, I loved Doc Rivers. I thought he was a fantastic head coach. And slowly over the years, I've come to like him less and less. I just think he's very stubborn. He is not the best when it comes to, switching up the rotation. He doesn't really change things up much. He kind of just sticks to his way or the highway. That's kind of how he is. And he really clings to that 2008 Celtics ring. That's what's kept him, I think as an NBA head coach all this time is that one ring he won with Boston. I'm going to give him the advantage just out of respect that he's been doing this forever. And Jacque Vaughn, of course, this is his first year as the coach in Brooklyn. So I will give the knock reluctantly to Doc. However, I think Jacque Vaughn can develop into an elite level head coach. Let's look at their records. Philadelphia won 9 more games this year. They're 54-28 to Brooklyn's 45-37. Of course, like I said earlier, a lot of those wins for Brooklyn came on the back of Kevin Durant. So that's kind of a little misleading. We all know, had this Brooklyn team had this roster at the start of the year, they're obviously not the 6th seed. We all know that. In the last 10, Philly's 500, which is kind of surprising. I didn't expect to see that whenever I looked. And then for Brooklyn, they're 6-4, so they're a game better in the last 10. Overall, what does all this mean? What does all this blabber, all this rambling I just did, what does this mean? What is my prediction? Of course I'm picking Philadelphia. I think everyone is picking Philadelphia. This is basically a layup for the Philadelphia 76ers. And as someone who is heavily rooting for Philly, I'm really glad that they got this matchup because there's some real tough teams that are out there in the same range as Brooklyn. And I think whatever team got Brooklyn, they got the favorable matchup here because, like I said, we all know, had this team been this team at the start of the year, they're not making playoffs. So I do like the collection of role players, but come on, in the East, especially in this matchup, I want to go with the sweep, but sweeps are very rare to happen. We know we saw it last year with Boston and Brooklyn. But they do have Claxton, who obviously he's not going to shut Joel down, but he can definitely slow him down. He's one of the better defensive players in the whole league. So I'm tending to say 5. I'm going to give Brooklyn a game here just because I think there's a chance Joel or Harden or both of them could have an off night. And I do like Brooklyn's depth a lot. Like I said, I like their coach a lot. So I do think they will be able to steal a game in this series. If it was a sweep, I really, really wouldn't be too surprised. I think it's really just going to come down to, I think Embiid or Harden or both are going to have a bad game. But ultimately, that's it. That's my prediction. I'm going to go officially with Philadelphia winning this in 5 games, advancing to the second round in a pretty easy series here. That is it for the coverage of this first-round matchup. Next, we'll be doing the 3-6 out west, which is, of course, the Kings versus the Warriors. So stay tuned for that. If you've made it this far, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Leave a like and subscribe. Thanks.